I'm Jim Bitterman in Paris, and this is CNN.
Good morning. It's Monday, October the 21st. I'm Nina Dos Santos at CNN London.
And I'm Pauline Chu at CNN Hong Kong. Welcome to World Business Today.
These are the top stories this hour. Record fine for JP Morgan as US regulators accuse the bank of misleading investors.
The jobs report is back and will dominate investor attention this week.
Also on the show, Ford CEO Alan Mulally discusses his Asia strategy as he unveils a new taxi for Hong Kong.
But first, we begin with the bushfire emergency in the Australian state of New South Wales. Officials fear as many as 3 fire fronts could merge, forming a mega fire. CNN's Robin Curnow is live in Katoomba, Australia, which is about 100 kilometers west of Sydney, and she joins us live with the latest. Robin, where exactly are you in Katoomba, and what are you seeing?
Hi there. Well, we're outside the Bushfire Control Centre. You can see some of the firefighters behind me. They've come off shift after fighting these raging fires all day. They're preparing to go on shift again throughout the night, mostly to fight the fires in terms of back burning, to try and get ahead of these fires where kilometres and kilometres of blazes are raging through this area.
And Robin, just how big are these blazes? That we're talking dozens of them. And do you happen to know what caused some of the fires?
Yeah. Well, as I flew into Sydney a few hours ago, it was quite interesting because at least for the last 10 to 15 minutes of our journey as we descended into Sydney, you could see literally a ceiling of smoke surrounding Sydney. So essentially these fires are huge. They're massive. Some estimates around 100,000 hectares of land have been burnt. In terms of what has caused them, a number of estimates from the authorities here. They said that they've charged a 15-year-old boy. They're also speaking to an 11-year-old for arson attacks, essentially. There's also investigation into whether some sort of military training could have sparked this off. Also, natural causes, high winds, also high temperatures, unseasonably hot, together with rather a dry scrub that we've seen, and all of that together has created this recipe for these wildfires, which has been some of the worst in New South Wales history in the last few decades.
Some of the worst, and also an early start to the fire season after a very dry winter. Robin Curnow there live in Katoomba, keeping her eye on the situation there as it's getting very, very serious. Thank you very much, Robin. Nina.
Yeah, certainly a story we'll stay on top of throughout the course of the day here on CNN, Pauline. But going back to the world of business news, America's largest bank could be paying the largest ever fine assigned to a single company here. A U.S. official tells CNN that JP Morgan Chase has reached a tentative deal that's worth around about $13 billion. Yes, billion we're talking about there, as part of an agreement with the U.S. Department of Justice for civil investigations on both federal and also state levels. Authorities have accused this bank, JP Morgan Chase, of misleading investors over the quality of its investments. These are investments that it sold up in the run-up to the financial crisis of 2008. What the bank did at the time was bundle together mortgage loans and sell them on in the form of what's called mortgage-backed securities. So they're backed by the collateral and also the mortgage that the person who's taken out the mortgage has to pay. But due to the easy lending standards, many borrowers weren't actually able to pay back their home loans, which caused everything else in the bundle to fail as well. While this settlement would end civil charges, criminal investigations will continue for JP Morgan. Ralph Silver is the director of the Silver Research Network. As you can see here, he joins us now live on the line from Skype from Toronto, Canada. Great to see you, Ralph. And we've talked so many times about JP Morgan having all of these claims. How big? This is huge. $13 billion. It's the biggest ever. What does it say?
I think, first of all, it's astronomical. The number we're talking about here has never been seen before, and I doubt we're going to see it again for any other bank for quite some time. The issue here is the fact we're talking about mortgages, and mortgages are always a big number item. So the fines, of course, are going to be large. But there is a lot of negotiation going on, so we're not entirely sure if it's going to end at just $13 billion. In fact, it could be quite a bit more when this is all said and done.
Well, Ralph, the other issue is that what they could be doing here is being forced to lay open the door for civil claims as well. And that means that investors themselves could individually sue. That could cost even more than $13 billion.
Oh, absolutely. And JP Morgan, to their credit, has assumed it's going to cost approximately $22 billion when you bring in all the civil liabilities, because there are reports that are coming out that are suggesting that JP Morgan's going to admit that they did something wrong. And the minute that you admit you've done something wrong. But there's also one additional element here, and that is that of criminal charges. There might actually be some criminal charges put upon JP Morgan. And the problem with that is, if a bank is criminally negligent on something, can they keep their banking license? And we've never gone into that situation, so we're not entirely sure if JP Morgan can even keep in business the way they're going now.
With the cozy relationship between banking regulators and CEOs of banks the world over, not just in the United States, is it realistic as a possibility that Jamie Dimon may have to go?
It is realistic that he's going to have to go, but let's be clear, is everyone really likes him and they think they did a really good job after the 2008 crisis. And we're talking about problems that happened prior to 2008. So prior to the particular point that where Dimon was in charge here. But nonetheless, heads have to roll. We as the public, as the voting public in North America, have said the bankers need to pay. And the Justice Department in the United States has decided to put JP Morgan at the front of that fight and to illustrate that they're not going to be pushed back by bankers. And I think Jamie Dimon might actually be seriously considering retirement at this point, but it'll be a very healthy retirement on his behalf.
But this presents quite an interesting paradox, doesn't it? Because JP Morgan is actually the strongest of the banks on Wall Street.
Yes.
So what some analysts are saying is that, well, it's interesting because awarding these kind of, assigning these kind of fines to companies like JP Morgan means that the banking sector is actually doing better because it can swallow fines like that.
Oh, absolutely. JP Morgan can swallow 13 billion very easily. They can actually swallow up to 22 billion without really affecting them. And I know those are astronomical numbers. So putting a fine like this on JP Morgan's not going to kill the bank, nor is it going to kill the banking industry and throw it back into recession. My biggest question, however, is if JP Morgan gets a $13 billion fine, what are the other banks going to have? The UBS is the only other bank that's had a fine like this, and it was a few hundred million. So it's not in tune with what's going on in the industry. So if this fine is imposed in other American banks, then we're going to have to be talking about, is the banking industry sustainable in the U.S.?
That's an interesting whole other question. Ralph Silver there from the Silver Research Network. Thanks so much for getting up so early from Toronto, Canada, to come on the show and shed your views. So, Pauline, as you can see, well, the ramifications of this could be just as complicated as unravelling the financial 2008, because we're still having to deal with the leftovers.
Yeah, and Ralph really put it into context when he said a bank like JP Morgan could actually swallow $22 billion. So he really put some good perspective in that. And it may be the biggest penalty to hit JP Morgan, the $13 billion, but it isn't the only one. Earlier this month, it reported its first quarterly loss in 9 years because of huge legal settlements. That included fines of more than $1 billion for failing to supervise some of its traders. Risky bets by the trader known as the London Whale led to more than $6 billion of losses. The bank was ordered to pay over $80 million in fines after U.S. regulators said it was unfair to credit card users, and it had to refund more than $300 million to customers. And then there was that $410 million settlement on charges of manipulating electricity markets in parts of the U.S., namely in California and the Midwestern part of the United States. Nina.
Let's move away from the banking sector, Pauline, especially in the United States, and have a look at where stocks are doing at the moment. This is the first trading session of the week, and wow, there's a little bit of a dichotomy going on here between the Eurozone markets and the other markets that are outside of the single currency. As you can see, we've got some very, very meagre losses for the likes of the Frankfurt, etc. DAX. London's FTSE 100 up. That's partly due to some significant breakthroughs in the energy sector. We'll get back to that later on throughout the course of the show. But we're also watching to see whether just generally these kind of markets can continue their winning streak for an 8th day, because they did do pretty well last week after that debt deal was reached in America. Some investors and economists wondering now whether the Federal Reserve, if we look forward further on the horizon, will start to delay stimulus cuts until March. So this is the so-called tapering, if you like. This is the first full week of the US government being back in business after the shutdown, which lasted well over 2 weeks, Pauline, and these markets had suffered, but it looks as though the rebound may be coming to an end.
Well, Nina, here in the Asia-Pacific region, we had quite a rebound here. As you can see, all the major indices ended in positive territory. Investors were following Wall Street's positive close on Friday, and the markets are optimistic amid speculation, as Nina mentioned, that the U.S. Federal Reserve will probably not begin to taper until well into 2014. Now, the Shanghai Composite ended the session by the highest by more than 1.6% after the government said over the weekend that it plans to further its economic reforms. We have seen mini stimulus, but they say they want to do more than that. And as a result, mainland technology shares were up. The main Aussie benchmark hit a fresh 5-year high today, up by almost 0.6%. The Nikkei is up, but not for reasons that you would want. It's because the yen weakened off of news that the trade deficit widened for the 15th consecutive month. And the major reason for that is the increase in prices in fuel. Much of the fuel to Japan is imported, and a weaker yen makes that fuel more expensive. Now let's take a look at the markets in the U.S. and how futures are pointing. Following Friday's rally for U.S. stocks, futures are all higher at the moment here. Investors are optimistic, again, that the Fed probably won't make any major moves in the immediate future. But of course, you never know. They have another meeting at the end of October and also in December. Looking ahead, we are also expecting September's jobs numbers, which will be out tomorrow. So the Fed will be able to chew on that for a little bit, as well as other investors. Now, we're also expecting a report on U.S. home sales. That's due later out today on Monday. And earnings reports coming out this week will be from AT&T and Amazon, and we'll cover that later on in this show, Nina.
But coming up next on World Business Today, after this very break, concerns about safety and pay. 2 workers from the stricken Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant in Japan speak to CNN about working conditions at the site of the world's biggest nuclear disaster in a quarter of a century.
Go inside the world of horse racing with CNN's Winning Post this month.
We're in Paris for the most sought-after prize on the racing calendar, the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe.
Winning Post, Thursday on CNN, in association with Longines. CNN's original series, Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown, South Africa. Can a country once torn apart by racial division bring communities back together?
Are these good times for South Africa?
South Africans say yes.
I think it's one of the most mixed societies I've ever seen.
When you look at what's happened here, it's hard to not look at South Africa as a beacon of some kind of hope.
Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown, South Africa, only on CNN.
Aiming for gold. Join a global journey that ends at the Sochi Games. This month, get into the mindset of Olympic hockey players.
It's a different type of feeling that you can speak your native language all the time.
And
It was tough today.
It's extremely hard.
training for skiing in the summer. Aiming for gold. Thursday on CNN in association with Russian Railways.
International Desk, tonight on CNN.
Hello and welcome back. Britain has awarded a contract to the French utility company EDF to build its first nuclear reactor in decades. The project will cost some $26 billion in total. Some of the money is expected to come from Chinese investors. Well, this was Britain's Finance Minister George Osborne with the EDF CEO touring a nuclear power plant in China just last week. Osborne announced plans to allow Chinese companies now to take a majority stake in UK nuclear power projects from here on. Let's have a look at how the UK's, or how EDF shares are doing, I should say, in Paris. As you can see, as we showed you before the break, the CAC 40 is actually down by the most among the European markets, and those EDF shares falling despite the fact that obviously they've been awarded this major contract. Well, staying with this field, the United Nations nuclear watchdog is commending the Japanese government on its efforts to deal with the problems around the area surrounding the stricken nuclear plant at Fukushima Daiichi. The IAEA says in its report, which has just come out in the last hour or so, that it's impressed with the progress that the government has been making to try and reduce people's exposure to radiation and working towards getting evacuees back into their homes in the area. Well, Japan's government appears confident that it can deal with the recent leaks of radioactive water at this stricken plant. However, our Paula Hancock spoke with some workers who still fear for their safety.
They are the workers trying to contain the world's worst nuclear disaster in a quarter of a century. A vital and dangerous job. But this worker at the Fukushima nuclear power plant tells CNN he is not treated well. He believes that if he complains, he will be fired. Hiding his identity, as workers are forbidden to talk to the media, he tells me he works 300 metres from the tank where a toxic water leak was discovered in August. We only know the facts when we get home, he claims, watching TV news and reading the newspapers the next day. There's no explanation about what is happening and how dangerous it might be. TEPCO says this leak was not dangerous to workers as they were wearing protective gear, telling CNN they have a system in place to ensure that workers know the general radiation levels in their areas, but they don't pass on all details of incidents to avoid confusion. This is a very complicated issue, says TEPCO's spokesman. Once this kind of trouble occurs, we assess what emergency measures are necessary, and if the accident does not affect workers directly, we don't explain the issue. As a subcontractor and not a direct TEPCO employee, this man is paid $110 a day, $50 lower than an online advert we saw for a similar job with another subcontractor at the same plant. Paid by his company and not directly by TEPCO, he worries the danger money workers are promised for possible radiation exposure is being skimmed off by some companies. Reports of middlemen getting rich from this disaster prompted TEPCO to issue questionnaires to subcontractors and their workers last year. TEPCO says 30% of those who responded said they received no danger pay for working at the plant. Of a dozen companies contacted by CNN, 2 dismissed the claims. Only 1 said it was aware of the issue and was working to ensure fair payment. TEPCO says it's doing the same. This man worked as a subcontractor at the plant immediately after the 2011 disaster. He says he doesn't believe TEPCO and its contractors are interested in fairness for workers. In order to cut costs, he says, TEPCO brought in a bidding system. To win the project, contractors are bidding so low. It's simple, he tells me. Excessive cost-cutting is making workers suffer in terms of payment and health. TEPCO maintains the bidding system is necessary and is making sure bids are adequate without excessive cost-cutting. Hailed as heroes following the nuclear meltdown, these 2 workers say there is now a feeling amongst some of being underappreciated and underpaid. Paula Hancock's CNN, Fukushima, Japan.
In other news in Asia, it's a landmark day for U.S. car maker Ford right here in Hong Kong. The auto giant is rolling out its all-new 2014 Transit Connect taxi, built specifically for the Hong Kong market. This is Ford's latest ambitious move to boost business in Asia. China is the world's #1 car market, and Ford aims to double its quarterly market share in China in the next 2 years. For the first time in its history, it now builds more vehicles in Asia than in Europe. But it's not stopping there. Ford has outlined plans to construct 9 new Asian factories by 2015, with 5 of them in China. My colleague Patricia Wu spoke to Ford's president and CEO, Alan Mulally, in an exclusive interview today about the company's strategy in the region.
7 years ago at Ford, and what we decided was actually to accelerate Henry Ford's original vision of not only making great cars and trucks, but make them affordable so everybody could appreciate it. So we committed to a complete family of vehicles, small, medium, and large, cars, utilities, trucks, SUVs, and commercial vehicles. And also we made a commitment that every new Ford vehicle would be best in class, and we dimensioned that in terms of what the consumers really value: the quality, the fuel efficiency, the safety, the really smart design like Sync. So as you mentioned earlier, China is a tremendous growth region. It's nearly 21 million units already this year. That's compared to like 16 million in the United States and 13.5 in Europe. And we are going to bring all of these vehicles either made here or we'll import them in on the smaller numbers and make this complete family available to everybody here in Asia Pacific, and especially starting with China.
So who is your biggest competitor in China? Is it Chinese car companies or foreign ones?
Well, most of us that operate in China, we have a joint venture and a partner, a Chinese partner. In our case, we're very fortunate to be in joint ventures with Chang'an Motors, which is a great company, and also with JMC. So we will continue. That's a great relationship. We use our collective knowledge about the country and the consumer, and we'll continue to operate in these two joint ventures.
Now, it's something you said about sticking to Henry Ford's original vision of making the most affordable cars. But in China, can you realistically expect to make the cheapest cars? I mean, what is Ford's positioning in the market?
Oh, you bet. Oh, absolutely not the cheapest car, but Henry Ford's vision was to make the most valuable ones. And so when you look at the quality and the fuel efficiency and the safety and the capability, he wanted to use Ford's scale worldwide, operate in every country in which we sell the vehicles, so we could also be part of the community, be part of the economic development and energy independence and providing great jobs and great careers. So with Ford, you get the complete family, you get the cars that you want with the capability you want, but you also get the very best value because of our scale worldwide.
Now, you know, I cannot let you go without asking you about all of the buzz that you've been approached to run Microsoft, perhaps a leadership role at Boeing. I know if I ask you yes or no, you're going to tell me you're very happy at Ford. So instead, I'm going to ask you, if you were to run Microsoft, what would be the first thing you would do?
Well, I really would like to go back to the way it is, and that is that I'm very, very happy serving at Ford. We have no plans that are different than that, and also we don't comment on speculation. But I absolutely am pleased to be serving Ford. I'm really glad to be here today.
That was a brilliant tap dance, not answering the question that everyone is asking, are you going to Microsoft? Well, that was Ford President and CEO Alan Mulally speaking exclusively with Patricia Wu. Nina.
Hey, look, at least she tried. Sometimes you just have to ask those questions, even if you know you're not going to get a straight answer, Pauline. Now, many foreign firms are seeking out opportunities for investments in Myanmar, but it's not necessarily a win-win situation. Up next on World Business Today, we'll show you how local businesses are losing out to competition from overseas firms.
40 years of progress, partnership and innovation. Patents help inventors bring new technologies to market, creating prosperity and jobs. Patents secure value through investment and licensing. Patents reveal the state-of-the-art, with millions of technical solutions free to access through our databases. Innovators strive for a better world. The European Patent Office supports them.
America's Chris DeMarco. Paul Casey lifts the Falcon Trophy. Martin Kamer goes wire to wire. Amazing! Kamer's done it again. Sensational scenes. Kaiser Kamer scores a hat. Bunkers, dancing, aces, and Rock slays the Giants. Extraordinary. Stars fall, new stars are born.
My voice, my story,
my life. In South Africa.
In Kenya.
South Sudan.
Hear Africa's voices.
A way of understanding the world.
A door to the soul.
In Africa. In Africa.
In Africa.
CNN African Voices.
My name is Ziad Mahirsi. I'm a global health professional. I'm a social entrepreneur. Hear my story on CNN African Voices.
African Voices, today on CNN in association with Glow. Get an insider's view of the world's leading transportation hubs with The Gateway. This month, we're headed to Hong Kong to see how this city has established itself as the channel to China.
The number of passengers who, want to go outbound is clearly large and growing.
Whether it's by plane or train, or the sea or the road, see how Hong Kong is expanding and reinventing itself to make sure it's the ultimate connection to the mainland. That's this month on The Gateway, only on CNN, in association with Russian Railways.
Innovators, influencers, they've reached the top and are today's leading women. Inspiring individuals sharing their insights on CNN. This month,
Don't try and pretend to do something else.
just be yourself. Helen Clark of the UN and Eva Chen of Trend Micro share how they have followed this seemingly simple advice in their own careers. Leading Women, Wednesday on CNN. In association with Omega.
Welcome back to World Business Today, live from London and Hong Kong. This week, we are putting a special focus on Myanmar, which is undergoing a rapid transformation. Last year, the country formerly known as Burma held its first free elections in 6 decades, and it's been trying to establish a political and economic voice on the global stage. Part of the government's strategy is to invite foreign investment, but as Paula Newton reports, the changes are taking a toll on some local businesses.
To get some insight into Myanmar's economy, we went for a spin with one of its entrepreneurs, a car salesman.
How much are you selling this car for?
70, yes.
70,000.
Yeah, 70,000 US dollar, yeah.
That's nearly 5 times the price you'd pay for this car in the United States. It's because there are still so few cars in the country. Demand is outstripping supply. Plenty of profit here and excitement too.
I don't miss this chance in changing our country.
Small-scale entrepreneurs are fueling a booming economy in Myanmar. Their skills were honed during years of military repression and economic decline.
Everybody has a shop, is a broker or whatever, because they have to find something for themselves without employment opportunities. Now the challenge will be, like in future, a lot of these businesses cannot continue or are no more competitive. So for them it's more difficult to survive in this competitive environment.
That competitive environment now threatens to subdue local business, and fierce foreign competition is just one problem.
Property prices and rents are now so high here that they rival New York and Hong Kong. Yes, New York and Hong Kong. It's hard to believe, but local businesses say that they've now had to move out of prime locations like this one.
Good commercial property is hard to find and even harder to finance as foreign players move into this relatively virgin market. Mien Ten has been running tea shops in the city of Mandalay for nearly 20 years, but he says he wouldn't dare invest in them now.
I am worried because the tea shops need good locations. When we have a good location, we earn more money. When the companies take the good locations, they will kick our tea shops out into the small streets.
The opportunities of Myanmar's economic liberation are not in dispute, but local business people worry about their role in all of it as more and more foreign firms and capital continue to flood in. Paula Newton, CNN, Yangon.
And later in the show, Paula Newton goes on the road in Myanmar. Her first stop, a tour of the holiest site for the country's Buddhists, the golden stupas of the Shwedagon Pagoda. Beautiful sight it is. Now, just after the break on WBT, after nearly 3 weeks, the wait is almost over. We'll have a preview of that big US jobs number that was delayed, of course, by the US shutdown.
Smart companies choose Germany.
At Madvertise, we are leaders in next-generation mobile advertising. Our targeting and automated media buying technology allow advertisers to get the best performance and ROI possible. Having run my own companies in Silicon Valley, I was attracted to Berlin for its buzzing startup culture. The region is Europe's fastest-growing technology hub.
Germany, smart up your business.
Hyundai believes this is where your inspirations set you free. makes every drive brilliant. Live brilliant. Hyundai.
You've been wanting to get this kind of access. Unfiltered, face-to-face exposure to Africa's key players who have a hand on what's next and know what works. Stop waiting for that door to open.
This is your opportunity for FaceTime.
They are the biggest names shaping Africa's business, and you want to know what they know.
And I think that's why Africa is attractive.
FaceTime Africa, every Friday on CNN, in association with MTN. This week on Inside Africa.
Do you ever consider when you're on the road that the tyres on which you're riding could have originated right here in Africa? I'm Errol Barnett, Inside Africa, and this week's show is all about rubber and the process of transformation, taking it from a seed in the ground to a wheel on the road.
Inside Africa, Wednesday only on CNN, in association with Zenith Bank. CNN Heroes honors people who don't ask for honors. They just want to change the world. Now you can vote for the CNN Hero of the Year. Go to cnnheroes.com. Vote once a day, every day, and honor these amazing people. Vote today.
Information is knowledge, information is power, information is security. And I strongly believe our viewers, people all over the world, have real questions of their own. They want to know what's happening in their world, what it means to them, how it'll affect them. And so it's really up to us, once we get elected officials or anybody in public positions in front of us, to keep up the persistence to get out of them really what we're searching for.
Christiane Amanpour, asking questions that help you make sense of the world. Amanpour, tonight on CNN.
In Nairobi, and this is CNN.
Live from CNN Hong Kong, I'm Pauline Chu.
And I'm Nina Dos Santos at CNN London. A warm welcome back, everyone, to World Business Today.
Let's start this half hour taking a look at what we can expect to see moving the markets this week. The dust has settled in Washington after nearly a 3-week delay because of the shutdown. The September jobs numbers will finally come out. The Department of Labor will release those figures on Tuesday. We'll get more U.S. earnings reports as the week goes on. Lockheed Martin opens its books on Tuesday morning. The aerospace company took in nearly $40 billion in government contracts last year. Other heavyweights reporting include McDonald's as well as Ford Motors. On Wednesday, we turn to the UK, where the Bank of England is publishing its minutes from this month's Monetary Policy Committee meeting. Investors will be looking to see whether there was dissent in the decision not to raise interest rates from an historic low of 0.5%. And with the second highest unemployment rate in the Eurozone, Spain will take center stage on Thursday with the release of its latest unemployment numbers. Now, for more on what we can expect to see from investors this week, we have a market strategist Ishak Siddiqui joining us live from ETX Capital in London. Ishak, thank you very much for joining us. We have a lot to digest coming up this week. Now, first of all, let's talk about those September numbers. Economists are forecasting an addition of about 180,000 jobs added, but this is all backwards looking, considering what has happened since the month of September. How much weight will you actually put on these numbers?
Not too much. I mean, they are going to be a good gauge of how the labour market's performing. Momentum has been very slow over the last few months, and that's been the big worry for investors, that we aren't seeing the encouraging jobs growth. On the other side, it does also mean that the Federal Reserve are very unlikely to taper QE in 2013. I think because it's a backward-looking report, it's very likely that investors are going to quickly dismiss it and look forward to the October figures, which are going to be out next month, and that's going to be a bit more difficult to gauge. But essentially, it's a big figure for all of us, given the fact that it's been delayed. So we'll be looking out for it quite eagerly.
Now, you mentioned the Fed. They do meet at the end of this month. Do you think they will discount some of this data that we'll be getting this week and actually wait until December before possibly making any sort of move?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Fed has it in mind that the data that's been delayed due to the government shutdown will be a backward-looking backlog of releases. So for that reason, it is a lot wiser for the Fed to just hold back and look at fresh data. It seems likely that, given the fact that we do have this fiscal situation in the U.S., although it has they've managed to reach a deal, it's a short-term fix, and we're going to have to readdress this early next year. For that reason, it seems very likely that the Fed are going to be very unwilling to unwind their asset purchase program just yet.
Okay, Ishak, thank you very much for joining us. I'm sorry we have to cut our interview a little bit short. We're out of time. Ishak Siddiqui there of ETX Capital there in London. Thank you very much. Nina.
Yeah, Pauline, all of this will be feeding into investors' minds later on throughout the course of the week. But for the moment, we're about 90 minutes into the trading session, the first day of the week so far. And as you can see, it's a bit of a mixed bag. FTSE 100, as you can see, up, pushing towards the 1% plus mark, hoping to continue its 8th straight day of gains in terms of the total sessions that this market has been up. Zurich SMI also up, but the other two Eurozone markets down, particularly the markets in Paris, as you can see, down already about a fifth of 1%.
Well, Nina, we had a much stronger session here in the Asia-Pacific region with all of the indices ending in positive territory, following in the footsteps and the momentum from Friday on Wall Street's at record highs, especially with the S&P 500 there. The composite today ended the highest, up more than 1.6% after the Chinese government indicated that it wants to institute even more economic reforms. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng ended up almost at 1.5%. We did have our eyes on a particular company that's shares of Hutchison Whampoa. They dropped more than 2.5%. Now, Hutchison Whampoa is owned by Asia's richest man, Li Ka-shing. The shares dropped because of plans to sell its supermarket chain, Park and Shop, and that was because the asking price was considered much too high. Nina.
Pauline, now that the U.S. government shutdown is well and truly over and the debt ceiling has been lifted, at least for now, the U.S. Treasury Secretary Jack Lew is turning his attention back towards that issue of the sequester. Namely, this is the $80 billion worth of spending cuts that the United States agreed to in 2011. It was the only way to find another way around another one of those deadlocks in Washington that it's become so famous for. Lew says that it's time to lift those severe cuts now.
I think there's no question but that the deep spending cuts that are part of sequestration are holding back the economy. There are competing ranges, whether it's 0.5% or more, up to a percentage of GDP. The president's made clear that we think you should replace some of the sequestration cuts with sensible, balanced entitlement and tax reforms that put us in the right direction for the future.
Well, none of this wrangling, it seems, is well and truly over. Maybe lawmakers have just agreed a truce, some say, because the deal that Congress reached last week only delayed the decision on those 4 spending cuts until January the 15th.
Now, fire crews in the Australian state of New South Wales are battling the region's worst bushfires in decades. More than 50 are burning at this hour, and officials fear that some could merge and turn into what they're calling a mega fire. 1 person has been killed. Hundreds of homes have been damaged or completely destroyed. Fire conditions may get worse as the forecast spells more hot and dry weather. Meteorologist Karen McGuinness is live at the International Weather Center with more. Karen, I don't know if you saw our correspondent Robin Colonel a little bit earlier. She was there at the Fire Command Center. You could see so much smoke in front of her. Every few seconds, she just had to wave the smoke out of her face. And that's just one part of the huge area that has been inundated with this smoke there. Give us a sense of how big this is.
It has already burned 116,000 hectares. At one point, we had more than 100 bushfires reported. And for fires to be this close to Sydney is extraordinary. But it is not unusual that you would see a fire situation this time of year, but for it to be such widespread territory that encompasses this portion of New South Wales, it is staggering. 1 fatality, as you mentioned, hundreds of homes damaged or destroyed. Here is Sydney, and here are some of the fire signatures on Google Earth that surround Sydney. Now, the one in particular is in the Blue Mountains, and because it is a mountainous region, the winds become very erratic. Here's what we're looking at. Weather conditions right now, 26 degrees. Just several hours ago, the temperature was at 30 degrees Celsius. Well, in the forecast, we are watching a frontal system that should cool things off and maybe produce a few showers. But it's not going to be significant. We haven't seen the fire danger like this in almost 40 years in New South Wales. And the Rural Fire Service says that they are accumulating all of their firefighters to battle these blazes, but it could take weeks for these fires to be put out. All right, Tuesday, Wednesday, a few clouds here and there, but the wind is going to be the problem. We'll start to see those winds coming out of the north, northwest, and they'll be brisk. We could see some of those wind gusts possibly up to 60 kilometers per hour or maybe higher. And there you see just how overwhelming it is to see perhaps your home, your livestock, your gardens, your livelihood destroyed in such destructive manner. Well, as I mentioned, the area of high pressure shifts a little bit towards the east. Frontal system sweeps across New South Wales, but the precipitation it's expected to produce is going to be so minimal that it's not really going to help firefighters terribly much. But it looks like, Pauline, things are going to be cooling off in the 20s coming up for Thursday.
Okay, but still so many challenges ahead with little precipitation and that change in wind direction there. Such a challenge for firefighters. Karen, thank you so much. Karen McGuinness there live at our CNN Weather Center. Nina.
Pauline, coming up just after the break, we sit down with our next executive innovators. Part of our series here on World Business Today, we'll be talking with a business leader who's moving forward with his innovative take on the SUV. That's next. Do stay with us.
அடிக்கடி கரண்ட் ஆஃப் ஆறதுனால நான் கடையை மூடிடலான்னு இருந்தேன். ஆனா இன்னைக்கு பிசினஸ் எக்ஸ்பான்ஷன் பண்ணலாம்னு முடிவு பண்ணிருக்கேன்.
Hii ilikuwa tasa. Hakuna maji, hakuna chakula. Kisha siku moja maisha yetu ilibadilika.
People ask how I keep smiling in such a critical place. I say thanks to Kirloskar.
Kirloskarக்கு நன்றி. அது என் வாழ்க்கையை மாத்திடுச்சு.
Kilota ilibadilisha hatima yetu.
In the next minute, Africa will provide the world with over 6,000 barrels of oil and 134 carats of diamonds. And in 10 years, this continent will have the world's youngest population living above these incredible resources. The question is, where will you be? We've been here 150 years, and we're still amazed at what happens in a moment. They call it Africa. We call it home.
Witchdeck Roofing, changing the roofs of Africa. Powered by AHI Roofing New Zealand, pioneers of stone-coated roofs around the world. AHI Roofing is owned by Fletcher Building, which has over 100 years history in producing building products of excellent quality. Fletcher Building became the largest company listed in the New Zealand Stock Exchange in 2010. Witchdeck Roofing, changing the roofs of Africa.
CNN's original series, Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown, South Africa. Can a country once torn apart by racial division bring communities back together?
Are these good times for South Africa?
South Africans say yes.
I think it's one of the most mixed societies I've ever seen.
When you look at what's happened here, it's hard to not look at South Africa as a beacon of some kind of hope.
Anthony Bourdain, Parts Unknown, South Africa, only on CNN.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching World Business Today. Well, every other Monday, we take you to meet industry pioneers, CEOs and business creatives from right around the world. Today's executive innovator has set up headquarters in Mumbai, India, running a global giant that covers quite a lot of ground, from construction to consulting. CNN's Malika Kapoor takes a closer look at why innovation was not an accident at Mahindra Group, but instead a necessity for its consumers at home.
Set up in India in 1945, originally to trade steel, India's Mahindra Group continues to evolve and expand. Best known for its utility vehicles, the conglomerate is present in several sectors across 100 countries. Mahindra's mantra is alternative thinking, as we found out when we spoke to its chairman and managing director.
Innovation seems to be part of your company's DNA. How did you create such a culture?
I certainly can't take the credit for doing it myself.
DNA, as you know, implies something that is a legacy from generations. But you're right, you have to work at creating a DNA. And the DNA is the why of innovation. If you simply go out there and tell people innovate, it doesn't work unless they know why they're doing it.
In India, that means producing hardy cars suitable for rugged roads.
That's a phenomenal example of constraint-based innovation. Right. What is your constraint? Your constraint is poor infrastructure. Right. When you have poor infrastructure, you have to innovate. You have to be able to provide suspensions and ride quality that will provide comfort on those roads. You have to be able to provide much greater durability because unfortunately India is also one of the accident capitals of the world.
Mahindra says creating appropriate vehicles for the Indian market does not mean making them low-tech. Instead, he says, these constraints force the group to think outside the box.
India is not China. We cannot create new cities with broad boulevards by bulldozing shanties, by moving things out of the way. We have to accept things the way they are. So that to me is the problem, but it's also exciting because it forces us to think disruptively.
An example of disruptive innovation is the group's flagship product, the Scorpio SUV, launched in 2002. According to Mahindra, it's now sold in more than 45 countries.
We built for $120 million, including manufacturing facilities, a ground-up SUV, including powertrain. Now that would have cost something from $800 to $1 billion in any other part of the world, and we did it for $120 million. That involved risk. It involved financial risk for the company. But if I hadn't taken that leap, people wouldn't have believed that I meant anything else I said about innovation.
The company's latest offering is a swankier product, the XUV. Launched in 2011, it was sold out for more than a year. Part of its appeal is its affordable price tag, around $20,000.
Quite apart from that, I think it was really the styling that got people.
It's a beautiful shape.
It would go around the streets and people would stop and stare and then say, where is this car? When can I get it? Which brings me to the point relevant to our discussion, and that is style and design to me is an intrinsic part of innovation. And that's why I'm proud of this product, because I think its success has to do with how it's integrated design into its features and innovation.
Well, you had a woman design it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Malika Kapoor, CNN, Mumbai.
Executive Innovator is brought to you by Panasonic.
Sou uma pessoa comum. Eu gosto de apreciar todos os momentos do meu dia. Quanto isso pode me motivar? Como eu posso me manter focada? Tudo ao meu redor, incluindo os momentos do meu dia a dia, é o que eu preciso para me concentrar para a minha luta de 90 minutos. Quero dar esperança às pessoas. A better life, a better world.
Panasonic.
Some people only see what's on the surface. Add depth to your perspective. Through our uncompromising investigations and unbiased insights. Trends. The international magazine on Arab affairs.
This week, CNN's On the Road series is offering a greater insight into the customs and cultures of Myanmar. From its famous pagodas to the treasures of Mandalay, Paula Newton explores the places, the people, and the passions unique to this largely unexplored Southeast Asian nation. She begins her journey in the bustling commercial hub of Yangon at one of the city's most iconic sites, the Shwedagon Pagoda.
The Shwedagon Pagoda. It's almost like a state of mind for Buddhists here. It's the first thing you notice in Yangon, a gleaming stupa that clearly has its magnetism. Myanmar is one of the most devout Buddhist nations on earth, and Shwedagon, its most revered site. As I found out, it can be a spiritual journey, no matter what your beliefs.
Hello.
Hello? Yes.
Hi.
I'm Chomen U.
Chomen U.
Yeah.
Okay.
Here.
Thank you so much for meeting us here. This is spectacular.
The greatest one here in Myanmar.
I don't even know where to look first.
This is we call Sui Dagong Pagoda. Sui means gold.
Gold.
And
It
the gold
certainly is
means,
gold.
the gold means former names of Yangon. So we call Golden City Pagoda.
And it's 2,500 years old?
Of course. But when it was first built, only 20 meters, very small one. After 14th century, they built and built. Now the present height, it's 100-meter height now.
100 meters?
Yes. The peoples from here, mostly Buddhist people, have to come here at least one time in their life.
So it is a pilgrimage that everyone does once in their lifetime?
Yeah.
Centuries of fidelity to this site rests on the legend of this place, that the Buddha appeared to two merchant brothers and gave them 8 of his hairs to enshrine. Paying homage here to Buddha is said to bring one closer to nirvana, closer to a state of perfect being. So where are we headed now?
The wishing ground area, so you can see more local people here. Because most of the people, they believe if they make a wish here, their wish come true. Every day she come and meditate.
Every day for 10 years?
Yes.
And what did she wish for today?
For health.
For health.
It's
a good thing to wish
Not
for.
only for self,
But for her whole family?
every people in this world, for every people.
It's clearly why she was here so long. Yeah. At times here, Buddhism has been a rallying point, a source of purpose and strength against the former military regime, or as in the 20s and 30s, resistance to British colonial rule. But recently, regrettably, it has been invoked in Buddhist attacks against Muslims, a notion counter to what most monks so fervently pray for when they come here. Do you pray for peace? Do you pray for health?
Yeah.
Do you pray for your country?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah. I did meditation, mind pure, heart pure.
While Buddhism here echoes the country's rich history, it will surely inspire its hopeful future. Paula Newton, CNN, Yangon.
Let's return to business news now, because the European markets are still in something of a mixed mood on this Monday session. As you can see, broadly a case of 2 up, 2 down, strongest gains coming from the FTSE 100. If we see the markets in Switzerland and in the UK ending the day higher, they'll be up for their 8th straight trading session. Frankfurt and Paris, though, down. Some investors and economists wondering now whether the US Federal Reserve will delay its stimulus cuts until March because of the pronounced effects of the government shutdown in the United States and, of course, the debt debacle. Ollie.
Well, here, Nina, in the Asia-Pacific region, we had a much different picture where we had a much stronger close, where all the major indices traded higher throughout the session and ended in positive territory, with the Shanghai Composite leading the gains. They're up by 1.6% after the government said it wants to institute even more economic reforms. And we saw technology shares leading the way there. The Nikkei also ended up off a weaker yen, but that's because it was revealed that the trade deficit widened for the 15th consecutive month, and part of that was because of higher import fuel prices, and most of Japan's fuel right now is being imported. Nina.
Well, we've got a few hours to go before the US markets get up and running, but here's an interesting story for our viewers out there. A US-based startup is now adding a new twist to fantasy sports, offering fans a chance to buy and sell shares in their favourite athletes. Shares are tied to the performance of these athletes, brands in particular. Zain Ashin now shows us how all this exactly works.
On the field, he's explosive. Off of it, charming.
What's your favourite food?
My mama. Some bomb enchiladas.
And if one company has its way, he'll soon be a publicly traded asset.
We're interested in working with Arian because he has attributes that are beyond just being a Pro Bowl running back. His approach to life and things off the field make him an attractive candidate for us.
Star NFL running back Arian Foster is the first athlete to sign up with Fantex, a San Francisco-based startup that will allow fans to buy and sell shares of their favorite athletes. Fantex will pay Foster $10 million up front. In exchange, investors get the opportunity to earn 20% of Foster's future income, including money from playing contracts, endorsements, and appearance fees. Fans can buy a stake at $10 a share. They also have to invest a minimum of $50. But veteran sports branding consultant Robert Tuckman is punting the Foster stock.
It's very difficult to monetize athletes' brands post-playing days. It's very difficult to monetize athletes' brands while they're playing.
Fantech says it's looking for talented athletes with significant growth potential.
How you play, the performance of your play gives you a platform in which to have a voice in the marketplace, which impacts your brand.
But what's in it for the athletes?
For players, this is a complete home run for Arian Foster. I mean, he's basically buying himself insurance in terms of his playing days.
So why Arian Foster? Well, he's one of the NFL's biggest stars. His brand has surged with the popularity of fantasy football. He's a must-start running back for team owners, and Fantex wants to make him a must-buy for investors.
Investors, though, should tread carefully. Fantex lists 84 risk factors on its website, including the risk of athletes getting injured and unforeseen issues with its trading platform. And if Fantex doesn't raise enough money in the initial offering, it says it's scrapping the deal. Still, the company is bullish about bringing sports investing to the average Joe.
We really embrace this concept of him being a trailblazer, and it fits his brand and how we see him, and we think that there is a desire for that out in the marketplace.
Zain Asher, CNN, New York.
Wow, well, that could be a financial own goal, of course, if the athlete themselves injures themselves, Pauline, couldn't it? But I suppose the safer way to do all this is just to invest in the brands that sponsor these athletes, surely.
Yeah, that could be, but fans really love to feel connected. So I think the concept of investing in a particular individual has a lot of appeal. And Nina, when I first heard about this story, it reminded me of a story I had read 5 years ago about a minor league baseball player with the Cleveland Indians named Randy Newsom. And I read about him, and it was such an interesting story because he was selling shares of himself and his future income as a minor league pitcher, and he was selling 4% of his future income, and then I never heard anything about him, so I just Googled his name today. Well, it turns out he's the vice president of business development of this very company that Zain just reported on. So clearly he has a lot of faith in that concept of investing in the athlete. So we'll see where it goes.
And he also has first-hand experience. That, I'm sure, will be something that the company will want to tout as it looks towards getting investors to put their money into it. Well, would you buy a stock in your favourite athlete? Please send us your thoughts on that or anything else that you've seen on the show. As you can see, our Twitter handles are Santos CNN for myself and Pauline CNN for Pauline over there in Hong Kong. Well, that's it for this early edition of WBT. Thanks for joining us.
And we'll be back in 4 hours with the opening bell on Wall Street. CNN Newsroom is coming up next.
Are you ready for this? Get ready for the adventure of a lifetime in Cambodia, the Kingdom of Wonder.
aiming for gold. Join a global journey that ends at the Sochi Games. This month, get into the mindset of Olympic hockey players.
It's a different type of feeling. You can speak your native language all the time.
And
it was tough today.
it's extremely hard. Training for skiing in the summer. Aiming for gold. Thursday on CNN in association with Russian Railways.
Innovators, influencers, they've reached the top and are today's leading women. Inspiring individuals sharing their insights on CNN. This month,
don't try and pretend to do something else.
Just be yourself. Helen Clark of the UN and Eva Chen of Trend Micro share how they have followed this